Anyway, I'm glad you all made the trip safely here. Hopefully nobody's still roaming around between locations. We're putting in for a bus next time so that Narish can bring us over in style. Anyway, you saw the miscanthus at Norman's, and this is a field of switchgrass. This is Big Rock. It's now being replaced with Big Rock 2, but it's very similar and developed from the same selective process that Roger outlined to you this morning from cave-in rock. So this is its third year. So it was planted a year ago this past spring, like 2 years ago this past spring. The first year we didn't take anything off, although there was perhaps a half a ton to the acre. Last year we took a crop off and it was about 5,000 pounds to the acre. This year we're expecting to be in the 9,000 pounds to the acre range. And it'll probably stay fairly consistent with that at least for 5 or 6 years. We saw, Mahendra alluded to the head smut program. That's our primary concern in terms of when we take it out. Mahendra will show you there the seed head if you want to pull one off with the seeds there. When you get head smut in it, those seed heads will go black and it'll come off on your fingers. It's a very slow process. Like even once you have it, it doesn't mean it ends. It's just your yield starts to decline a little bit. And but that's the primary reason we look at taking it out after 8 to 10 years. And we're expecting that we'll actually have a better, more productive variety to put in 8 or 10 years. Now we don't have data much on Big Rock and in terms of head smut. We're expecting it'll look the same as cave-in rock, but we don't know for sure. We are treating the seed. Any seed you get from Don Knott will be treated to ensure that the smut is not coming in on the seed. It's actually a food type treatment. It's not a chemical treatment. And so far, again, there's a study ongoing to show how effective that is, but so far it looks good. We do think head smut came into Ontario on seed from the US because there are 20-year fields in Quebec with no head smut. So that's what we think happened there. Sorry, go ahead.
Is it a fungus?
It is a fungus, yes.
So how did you establish this field? Like, did you establish under screen meat or something like that?
So establishment, we planted soybeans in it the year before, Roundup ready soybeans, so that we could keep that field clean. We go into it with a clean history, and we do till it. We plant it with a conventional seed drill, and we will use a herbicide if we need it. This stuff did germinate fairly well. This is Big Rock. So with the cave-in rock program, you really have to have everything right. Now we did get lucky in that there were some nice rains to germinate this. Probably would have germinated cave-in rock too, but in cave-in rock we have seen it go 2 months without germinating, and by then you have weeds no matter how clean you were. This case it came up decent and we haven't had much of a weed problem. We did spray it in the spring of the second year for broadleafs. There was a few patches especially that needed control, but we have not sprayed it for grasses. There is an option to go with pursuit prior to planting, which will get you, which has to have residual action, which will get you 40 days of essentially protection from a lot of grasses and broadleafs, which is what they do for seed production. We didn't use that here. We might try it next time. So that was our establishment. We did not fertilize with the first year. especially with cave and rock, anytime we fertilize, it's all going to the weeds. We want to have the switchgrass there before we fertilize, or we get an issue. Now, we did try to build up the fertility with the soybean crop so that we had decent P and K coming up here, and we may have to be quicker, but that was the establishment. Is that good? Again, last year we took a crop off. We will cut this in the next 2 weeks, put it in a swath, and it'll stay there till spring. We do have the option with switchgrass of actually making hay with it, and for that we would cut at the end of July, bale it up as green hay, let it dry, bale it up, and often we'll get a little bit more we can cut again in the fall. So again, for this one though, we'll cut this the next couple of weeks, leave it till spring, and bale it in April, May type time frame. Any other?
How do you collect the seeds, James?
So we're not producing seed here.
Okay.
So Don would go through on his seed producing fields and cut it just at the bottom of the seed head,
Okay.
process it, and he's got to dry it right away too. He's actually built a special dryer based in an old container to dry switchgrass seed, and that's all it does. He pulls it out for 2 days a year and dries his switchgrass seed. Well, it actually takes 6 weeks to dry it. It's a lower temperature, a warm temperature dryer with lots of air. But yeah, that's the key, is to get it off. If you let the seed get dry on the stalk, it falls off. Most of the stuff we bale in the spring, the seed's been left in the field.
And does that increase the density over time?
So we haven't noticed any density increase from that. We have seen fields fill in over time, but generally it's a spot that's, for whatever reason, maybe the deer had a field day in one particular spot after we planted it, or the geese or something, and you got a spot, or just it was bad ground or whatever. We have seen those fill in, and whether it's from the seed from the neighboring plant or it's from just filling in, I can't tell you. We do get the odd weed in there. There will be, we generally estimate less than 5%, but there will be the odd escapee and the odd other grass in there that you won't see because the switchgrass is so much higher. You will see them in the spring though. The cool season grasses will germinate a week, 10 days before the switchgrass comes up. And we have played with, in other fields, spraying it with Roundup during that window. And we've actually found that switchgrass this high is probably tolerant of Roundup. You need to get it this high if you want to burn it off. Reliably burn it off. So we have been able to take grasses out, but again, when you get something to this stage, it pretty much stays consistent unless you abuse it. So we had at the outdoor farm show, I don't remember, we had switchgrass plots there for a number of years, but we always cut them in September when the outdoor farm show was on, and they started going downhill. They're like alfalfa, they kind of need a rest period. At least that's our interpretation of it. In the fall, if you cut them and they don't have enough time to build up the root reserves, then you have overwintering problems. If you cut them the end of July for hay, we haven't had a problem. Where the window is, there's a lot more work to be done with that. But
Switching between hay versus biomass harvest in a plot, do you have any patterns with that?
So we're confident in cutting hay up until the end of July and not hurting the switchgrass. And we're confident cutting after Thanksgiving and not hurting the switchgrass. How much narrower that window could be, I don't know. We don't.
Switching hay into biomass, you're not seeing a degradation or benefit of doing a swap on that at all?
In terms of the switchgrass or in terms of
Hay
feeding it?
versus biomass. So is there benefit to doing it maybe hay one year and biomass another year? Or any patterns to that you can reference?
So the only pattern is what is hay worth. When hay's worth over 10 cents a pound, we're happy to cut our switchgrass for hay. And when it's worth less, well, we're happy to do it as switchgrass. Now we do expect, and I'll take maybe a few minutes to talk about the markets for switchgrass in particular. We are struggling as a co-op with Miscanthus markets, as I think Norm alluded to. We essentially have a backlog at the minute of Miscanthus. There was 2 years ago when straw was really short, we got rid of everything for bedding. Miscanthus, switchgrass, anything that would work, corn stalks, everything went for bedding to get us through that year. But none of those people that got Miscanthus came back and wanted it again for bedding if there was something else. Now, if we had processed it before we gave it to them, I'm quite sure we would have done better on repeat sales. Switchgrass, we do get repeat orders for bedding, particularly among the organic farmers, because there are no, all the wheat straw has fungicides on it now, and they want minimum of 60 days with nothing on it. The only reason we're not organic here after 3 years is because we either put nitrogen fertilizer on in the spring.
So no nitrogen now.
So we do put nitrogen on every year in the spring.
60 kilogram?
At about 60 kilograms per hectare, yes. You may have noticed a little lodging. It's not down flat, but we're on the limit of what we can grow with it standing up. We go to 80 kilograms per hectare of nitrogen. We're expecting that we will have flat spots in the field where we won't be able to pick it up. So, back.
Could you go organic? Like, could you feed that manure or compost or something like that would allow you to sell it more readily to that organic market, or is there not enough of a premium to be worth it?
So there isn't a premium for the bedding market. There is demand for it. But if you wanted to sell it as organic feed, you now have to be certified organic. And that would be a different market. But if we were going to go to that effort, we would probably go with a hay crop that they're going to value every year rather than just in the surplus years. But it wouldn't be too hard to go organic. This stuff, now that it's established, will continue to grow without nitrogen. So we could switch, it's just that your yield goes down, the amount of carbon you're sequestering goes down, your economic returns go down. So it's a value trade-off. So.
You pull it out of after your 8-ish years, cycle through how many years before you want to switchgrass back?
So our thinking at the minute is 2 years of cropping is enough to remove any residual head smut from the soil. Again, we're looking for the research data to back that up, but that's sort of our anecdotal experiences that 2 years seems to be enough to clean things up so you can go back in.
How, with the drought in Western Canada this year, I haven't been watching, how are hay markets looking for, how are markets for these crops this year?
So the hay market is in the middle somewhere in Ontario. There's been hay shipped out west and to Northern Ontario under government programs.
Yeah.
But basically, they can't afford it unless the government is paying the transportation. They could afford our hay at today's prices in Ontario. They just can't get it from here to there and it still be affordable. Like, you're going to sell your cows before you, like, it costs more to get it there than it does to buy the hay. So, but there has been, I don't know, probably at least 100 tractor trailer loads go to Northern Ontario and out west, if not more. I've got a couple friends that have been partners that have been looking at that market or facilitating that market. And, you know, this could have made hay to go out west, if you know, it would have fed cattle all right. It's actually baled for hay out west. They kind of lump all their prairie grasses together though and call them slough grasses, and it's generally considered a lower quality hay, but that's also because they tend to do it later and it's not managed. It's just, well, somebody mentioned baling phragmites. That's, you're baling native prairie grass is sort of the same idea. These are actually a purer stand than what the native stuff they bale and call slough grass out there. But it's certainly a viable feed, especially if it's handled right. It is always a low protein feed. It's not going to, well, back to markets. Dairy TMR. The switchgrass has proven to be at least as good as, if not better, than wheat straw in the TMR for at least dry cows. Again, we have some research data on that. It was somewhat inconclusive on milking cows, lactating cows. They're talking, the nutritionists are talking about a scratch factor in the rumen. So putting 10% of this or our spring-baled switchgrass into a TMR mix for dairy cows is improving feed efficiency a little bit. Bedding, the other big main use, has been in all kinds of different forms. So they take the bale and spread it out. The spring stuff especially will break up without doing any processing, unlike miscanthus, which remains as stalk. Lots of processing of it. We were working with an outfit just down Woodstock Way that was chopping and dedusting this and putting it in a bag to compete with shavings for horse bedding. Some really great results with that. Unfortunately, the outfit we were working with thought we were getting to be more competitive than their base product, so they didn't want to do any more for us. One of our members is looking at putting in his own setup for it, but and actually the Warm Season Grass Association in the U.S. has picked up on that idea and started doing it as well, not just for horses, but for backyard chickens as well. So all kinds of different ways it's been used for bedding, pack barns, stall barns. The dairy barns with a mattress, they've wanted the really fine switchgrass. So when we were doing the dedusted stuff, the stuff that came off the back end as dust was in demand from the dairy farms with the mattresses. And they would put a little bit of that on the mattress instead of wood shavings, and they were getting less hawk lesions and better udder health. And it, to me, you could still see the mattress through it. It didn't make any sense why it was working, but it was working. I mean, these guys count everything. You know, not only do they know what milk they're getting, you know, they're out there counting, oh, that's a little lesion. You know, so that's it. Industrial markets, we have quite a few on the go. This is Ontario Biomass Producers Co-op. We have a number of relationships with different projects and project management teams. Right now, there is one of our members is chopping and screening to try to get this length of material to replace hemp fibers in their composting toilet. They bring the hemp fibers in, which is a waste product from the Reading plant from Europe, into Burlington for their composting toilet, and they're looking for a local solution. So we're assuming that our trial was comes up like our test sample. You know, we are looking at entering into a contract for that, hopefully by the end of next week, because they want delivery in November. Yeah. everything gets, yeah. We have well, you heard about the SOC project from Norm. We have an MOU relationship with an outfit called DMT, which is fractionating miscanthus was their original intent, but now they're looking at switchgrass. And by fractionating, I mean they are separating it into cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin, and then they're transforming the hemicellulose into furfural, and the lignin into, which acid is it? I'll put you on the spot, Mahendra, because I forget the name of it. Platform chemicals that they're then going to sell. And that one is lab scale, demonstration scale is happening, and the pilot scale, they have enough confidence in that they're actually building it and planning for it, where we'll be putting product in hopefully in 2023 for that one. We have a project with BioOrigins, which is a pulp molding, where we're hoping to put at least a percentage of switchgrass into it. And that makes pulp molded products such as strawberry containers, or the little tray that's under the corn that you buy in the store, or in the mushroom containers, those kinds of things. And if we are successful with that and then go to thermal molding, we can make the plates that you ate off of today, those kinds of things, those food grade things. Take a little higher scale molding machine. It's the same pulp mixture, but it would take a different, more expensive molding machine compared to the batch molder that is en route, I believe, from China, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure where it is en route, but somewhere. So that's a few of the projects. We expect those industrial projects to kick off. They've been a lot longer coming than we expected. There's lots of days I feel like I'm, got the reward on a stick off my hat, the fishing rod. I just can't quite reach that fish because it's always been just one more year. The projects change. I mean, we originally started the whole thing based on Ontario power generation going off coal back in 2009. And we thought, oh, well, 2 years we'll be, putting 100,000 tons a year or more of biomass into Nanticoke. And, how are we going to get organized that fast? Yeah, man.
Those power generation company, they were eagerly engaging with all of us. That's why the big NRCan project below and Populous also came. And while they were talking, they were digging their natural pipe gas.
Yeah.
Straight to the Nanticoke. And they just fooled everybody. And we all were excited and all the stuff, not knowing the natural gas pipeline was going to Nanticoke. And after that, they said it's not cost effective, and they went with natural gas.
Anyway, I've said more than enough. I will take questions. If you got easy ones, if you got hard ones, we'll be now.
No. The car bumper, car product, the Ford company, miscanthus. What percentage of the miscanthus is going towards that? Because they really made bumpers, right? Bumpers and inside.
So that's not an OBPC project.
Okay.
I think there's two projects. So there's one in Eastern Ontario where they're using straw to make products. And I think it's more a filler in panels and things like that. It may be a filler in the bumper.
Okay.
And then
Converted to carbon.
and then there's the carbon one, which is with, what's their name again?
Competitive Green Technologies.
Yeah. And they're in southwestern Ontario,
Leamington.
and they kind of
Biochar?
Biocarbon is more.
For filtration?
Yeah, no. Because instead of direct fiber, they convert it to carbon, and that can be used replacing the carbon black and other.
So again,
as
it's
talc and other.
it's somewhat like a filler or a somewhat structural with inside the car bumper, I haven't seen a presentation from them for a couple of years, of course, because we don't go anywhere, but that's what they were working on. I don't know if it's been commercial yet from them. Actually, they started with the stuff out of the Dr. Mahanti stuff on plastic, and then they've just kind of keep moving away from it. And now they've stopped essentially producing their own feedstock. They're bringing in biochar and stuff. So we do have another project with Ag Carbon Canada where we're looking at pyrolysis to make biochar for some of these things, so we don't have to bring it in from China or the US or wherever. And that's with Ag Carbon Canada. So all kinds of stuff happening. But I need to stop because we have to be done before it rains. So questions? You're all good? That's excellent.
That acid, I just checked my phone, levulinic acid, levulinic acid.
There you go. Say that 3 times fast. So,
Is there lots of opportunity for more farmers to get into it, or is there still sort of, there's enough material for the markets that exist? Like, do you want 100 farmers showing up and planting switchgrass tomorrow, or is that's still a few years out?
excellent question. Really put me on the spot there, Jake. So we have been cautious with our farmers. We have not promoted the acres. We've asked them to invest in the market development and be ready. So we've encouraged all our farmers to plant 10 acres. Learn how to do it wrong so you know how to do it right when we need you. We have encouraged and do have quite a bit of uptake from people that are going to do their own use, but they're not really into the co-op function. So there is quite a few dairy farmers and a few hog farmers that have planted their own 15, 20 acres for their own use, their own bedding or their own feed for their TMR, or especially if they wanted it organic, you know, they could certify it organic then without paying the premium. So we have a fair bit of seed being sold to that, and there's a fair number of acres of that in Ontario now. In terms of commercial production, we absolutely do not want to see a year where it's piled up in the fence row. Okay, we've had too many past experiences. Well, hemp is an example, where back in the 90s it was promoted wildly, you know, people grew it, and then it was piled in the barns or in the fence rows for 10 years and nothing happened until you had a big bonfire. You know, it's so hard to get hemp to come back into those areas when there is a real opportunity if you let it get to that stage. So we're trying to coordinate it. We want our growers to grow a little bit, learn how to do it, and not get too gung-ho until we have a solid offtake for it. We do sell for our growers into whatever markets we have, primarily bedding, whatever, and we have in the past when we were shipping to the US to fill socks, their erosion control socks, and if you want that story I can give it to you, but we did clean up everything in Ontario for a couple of years. Anybody had surplus, we sold it that way. So that's the long answer. We want to encourage people to be ready, but just take it easy till we have that those commitments. Now we are expecting, you know, for somebody like DMT, they want to start in 2023. We're starting to talk to them now about their commitment for us to have stuff ready in 2023, and that will go back to our growers, flow through the co-op to the growers, and we do have a bit of a list. The sooner you sign up for the co-op, the higher you are on that list, but it will also be somewhat geographic. You know, we can't ship from Ottawa to London economically, but good, excellent.
Thank you so much, James. Yeah.
My pleasure.